Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good morning and welcome to the second day of the annual conference of the European Defence Agency under the headline Sustaining European Defence. And yesterday we had excellent debates. We tackled this question from the defence, military and industrial perspective. Today the discussions and speeches will be more on a policy and political level, and we will start with a set of opening speech and two keynote speeches. And indeed, I'm very glad that the very first opening speech will be given by Mr. Josep Borrell Fontelles, who is head of the agency, but indeed at the same time High Representative and Vice President of the Commission. He will be followed from EDA, NATO HQ, by NATO point of view, provided by the NATO Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Mircea, and then last but not least, second keynote speech given by Mr. Thierry Breton, Commissioner for Internal Market, but indeed he has in his portfolio also the agenda concerning defense industry and space. Then we will have high-level debate with Mr. Nikolaos Panayotopoulos, the Greek defense minister, and Madame Nathalie Loiseau, who chairs the subcommittee for European security and defense of the European Parliament, followed by a conversation on strategic compass with Charles Fries, Deputy Secretary General, European External Action Service, and on coordinated annual review on defense, a report with my deputy, Olli Rutu. So I would like to encourage you indeed to be sending your questions to us. And now it remains to me only to welcome Mr. Josep Borrell Fontelles. And please, sir, the floor is yours.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues on the defense field. It's my real pleasure to address you today at this, my first European Defense Agency annual conference. We are gathering some 800,000 participants from all over Europe and beyond, with representatives of armed forces, governments, European institutions, industry, academia, civil society, media. This is the widest reach ever for this annual rendezvous, which for me is very important, and it will be stressed in the next meetings, in the next years. It has to be the gathering point to talk about European defense, and we have to join in our forces in order to sustain European defense. It's not just the topic of the day. It's a common task for the years to come, and we have to pay much more attention to it. Me the first. And we are reminded of this need, of that reality, by the events every day. We are nearing the end of 2020. We look back on a special and challenging year where a completely unforeseen event has happened, marked by the global pandemic with the big, unprecedented, so the word that we use to refer to it, unprecedented, never happened before, impact on our societies and our economies, but also on our security. We see and we live in an increasingly volatile security environment with renewed tensions in our immediate neighborhood. They were there before the virus. They have exacerbated by the virus. The developments in the Eastern Mediterranean or the most recent conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh demonstrate the growing instability and unpredictability that our environment is affected. Adding to this, we see a weakening of multilateralism, increasing nationalism, growing rivalries between global powers, climate change, and risks associated with the use of disruptive technologies, cyber attacks, and terrorism. Just weeks ago, Ministers of Defense discussed the first ever threat analysis done at the European level on the basis of the contributions of 27 member states' civilian and military intelligence services. This analysis confirms that we are facing right now, but we will continue facing in the future, the most challenging combination of risks and threats since the end of the Cold War. And this period has not been very much peaceful, but now they are becoming worse. Our message coming out of this analysis will take quite a long time to finish it, but right now we already see that the message is loud and clear. Strengthening the European Union's security and defense policy, it's not some luxury that you have good, you don't have, you can live without it. No, it's a necessity. The challenges we face can only be addressed by providing a collective European answer. I know not everybody in Europe has the same understanding of how needed is this collective answer, but globally, I think the answer is very much needed if we want to survive in this new world. This means that we have to enhance our ability to act, autonomous when necessary. I know that the word autonomous brings some controversies among us, but I think it's clear that we will have to act alone, autonomously when necessary. In other words, we need to develop our strategic autonomy. Yes, let me repeat it, strategic autonomy. We have to discuss about what does it mean and how to do it, but we cannot renounce to use these terms, this concept. For that, we must increase our operational effectiveness, our civilian and military capabilities, and overall, our will to use them, because we have them. Our citizens look to the European Union for protection. A vast majority of citizens regularly ask for a more united Europe in defense matters. It seems that for them, for the citizens which are being pooled, being tested from the point of view of their opinions, they have it clear. They want to increase the Europe of defense, a Europe that defends their interests and values in a collective manner. They understand that there are economies of scale. They understand that together we could do better and cheaper. At the same time, enhancing our strategic autonomy goes hand in glove with a strengthening of our relations with partners. I will never insist enough that to be autonomous doesn't mean to be independent or to isolate your own world. No, being autonomous is a way of better strengthening relations with partners. You are a better partner. Reinforcing the transatlantic bond and cooperation with Nato comes first to my mind. Every time I'm saying strategic autonomy, there is someone saying, what about NATO? Well, strengthening, reinforcing our cooperation with NATO comes first to my mind, but also further cooperation with other international organizations such as United Nations and with third countries. I'm keen to start engaging with the incoming US administration, and I very much hope that with Joe Biden, we will have a partner in making, as So we have already started saying, making multilateralism great again. But this doesn't mean that we can stop with our security and defense agency, agenda, an agency. We still have a duty to take greater responsibility for our own security, that we have embarked on building this strategic compass, which I hope will be one of the most important outcomes of my years in term. Our working strategic compass should be considered a key deliverable of these years of my mandate. I have heard some questions over the past month as to why we even need yet another paper. That's true that we do a lot of papers, but yet another paper, well, if this means that Europe so far has acted without any kind of direction, it's not true, but this is a specific one directed to the broad situation of security, the challenges we are facing as overall to create a common understanding of the threats that the Europeans are facing, because they still don't have it. We do have a global strategy from 2016 and a number of sectoral strategies. We use the word strategy a lot on cyber or hybrid or on maritime security. And over the last years, we have also launched a number of new defense initiatives, such as the Jewel of the Crown, the Permanent Structured Cooperation, which is in the treaty as the agency. You are both the PESCO and agency. We are both in the treaty. You are at the highest institutional level of the European Union. It's not something that comes one day on the mind of some council. No. It's part of the treaty. And now the European Defence Fund, which is an initiative of the Commission that has to complement our activities. And I am happy to know that just after me will intervene my friend and colleague Thierry Breton, with whom we have to work hand in hand on reinforcing the European industry defense capabilities. What we intend to do now with the strategic compass is to give a clear direction to enhance coherence between all these initiatives and strategies, taking into account the rapid evolution of our security environment in the last years. More importantly, I think that the time has come for Europeans to converge more broadly on the definition of what kind of security actor we want to be. Security actor and security provider. And which are the sources of insecurity? When you say defense, immediately has to come to mind defense from which threat? And when you say security about which dangers? Which are the counterpart of the word security and defense? What does it mean for Europe to be a geopolitical power? The Commission has declared its will to be a geopolitical actor, but you cannot be geopolitical in the broad sense of the word if you don't have competences on such an important thing as defense or foreign policy. So it's Europe as a whole, the team Europe, all institutions who has to be geopolitical, meaning that we want to exist in the world facing the challenges and using the opportunities that the geopolitical landscape poses to us, offers to us, and taking into account the outside consequences of our decisions or of our inaction. For me, this starts by developing a common strategic culture on security and defense. You cannot pretend to have a common security and defense policy if you don't have a common strategic culture, which means understanding the world in the same way. And it's not going to be easy because member states come from different historical and cultural trajectories with deep roots in the past that has to be overcome in order to have a common understanding of the future, the present and the future. The strategic compass will give a clear political guidance on how to increase our operational effectiveness, our resilience, and our civilian and military capabilities. And at the same time, it should be able to strengthen our work with partners. I will repeat once again, strengthen our work with partners. Autonomy doesn't mean autarky, doesn't mean protectionism, doesn't mean to do chevalier seul. It means to be stronger, to participate on partnerships. These are the key elements that will allow Europe to become an autonomous global actor and a value partner, both alike. And this brings me to a key point about defense initiative, which is implementation, boots on the ground. Defining goals and shared ambitions is good, needed, not enough, necessary, but insufficient. We also need to follow them through and deliver on them. With all the European Union Defence Initiative launched on the last 4 years, since 2016, member states have taken the necessary steps through the Union to become a stronger and more credible security provider, for sure. And as a result, we have an agreed set of EU capability development priorities, which were revised in 2018. And under the permanent structured cooperation, member states have renewed their pledge to a set of binding commitments and to concrete collaborative projects. At present, 46 PESCO projects are ongoing, with 26 of them due to deliver, with concrete results by 2025 in areas such as military mobility, cyber defense, maritime surveillance, or medical. But to my understanding, these projects should be more oriented to practical implications, more engaged. European Defence Fund. It has 7 billion European euros to be invested over the next 7 years, less than expected. Well, I agree. Let's recognize that we were willing for quite a big amount of money. But I think it would be enough to start investing over the next 7 years to support the competitiveness and excellency of our industry. The European Defence Fund is related to the industrial defense capabilities development. You cannot expect to be autonomous on anything if you don't have an industrial basis, and on defense more than any other thing. So we have to support the competitiveness and excellencies of our industry. And the combination of these instruments has a unique potential to help us to advance towards a stronger European defense. This is why Commissioner Breton, Thierry, and I are working closely together. What is needed in the future, and there is no better place to state this than here at the European Defence Agency, look at the competences that the treaty allocates to the European Defence Agency. Go to the treaty and have a look at what the treaty says about what the European Defence Agency has to be and has to be doing. Because sometimes, you know, the member states, and when they approve a treaty, they use a wording, and then there is a certain tendency to forget about it. We cannot forget about it. You are on duty. You, dear Director General, dear all of you who are working here under my presidency, by the way, you don't have to forget about what the treaty expects from us. I suppose you know it, but please reread it every morning. Why the treaty created the agenda and why the people who signed the treaty were expecting from us to do. It is more or less that a concrete and progress and greater convergence among member states in defense investment, planning, and cooperation. This is not just rhetoric words. And everything that has to be done about the development of our defense capabilities collectively has to be impulsed, has to be developed, has to be. You are the big driver of these cooperation efforts in a field in which there are strong national identities and interest. This is also the main message that comes out of the first ever comprehensive defense review conducted at the EU level. The Coordinated Annual Review on Defense, CARD. Well, another acronyms. No? We have a lot of them, and people don't understand very well what we are doing because there are a lot of them, a lot of acronyms. We understand what does it mean. We live comfortably on this jungle of acronyms, but let's try to make this understandable. The Coordinated Annual Review on Defense, or CARD, sends us a message from the first ever done at the European Union level. And this CARD report shows us not only what we are lacking in terms of capabilities, but also how fragmented our efforts currently are. We are lacking capabilities, and we are very much fragmented on the ones that we have. Allow me to give you a couple of examples. In Europe, we currently operate 1,700 fighters aircraft, 1,700 fighter aircrafts, but they are of 16 different types. We have also 16 different types of battle. 130 corvettes, frigates, and destroyers of more than 30 different types. In the US, with for sure much stronger Navy capabilities, they only have 4 different types. It is clear that there are big difference on the maintenance, design, cost, when you have such a fragmented landscape of the tools you are using. Interoperability. It's not about going towards a one-size-fits-all. Huh? Let's be clear. I'm not saying you have to have just one type. It's not that. I know that one-size-fits-all approach or aiming at one single type of equipment for the whole of Europe will not work, and is not at all our purpose. We cannot afford anymore the current level of duplication and uncoordinated efforts because we pay a heavy price in terms of reduced interoperability on losing potential savings in terms of economy of scale of tens of billions of euros. And I think that's what European people, without being a specialist on defense, have in mind spontaneously when they answer, oh yes, I would like European Union to be more engaged on defense. Because they have an intuitive understanding that it would be better to have a more compact defense capabilities and less fragmented offer, each one having their own whole set of instruments on the field of defense. We have to spend more? Well, maybe, but for sure we have to spend better. And the best way to spend better is to spend together. The picture is not rosier on the operational side, where member states' commitment to the CSDP in real terms of personnel and expenditure barely represents 7% of their total operational commitments in all frameworks. The commitment of our member states, who are the provider of military capabilities, here in Brussels we don't have, their contribution to the CSDP in real terms, personal expenditure is less than 7% of their total operational commitments. It's clear that it leaves a big room for improvement. I would like to talk about the need of more cooperation and the role of a European Defence Agency. I've been talking about the European Defence Agency, how it is described on the treaty. What Europe needs is a more coherent and integrated defense landscape. We need more capable, deployable, interoperable, and sustainable military capabilities and forces. Capable, deployable, interoperable, and sustainable military capabilities and forces. I think that we need a drastic change of mindset by those making the key defense decision in the member states. Yes, defense remains a competence of member states. But if we want to build on common capabilities in order in the future, as the treaty also said, to look maybe to an European defense, now we have an European defense policy, we need a change on the mindset of those that makes the key defense decision in the member states. You know, cooperation is not always the easiest way, but it is the best that we have. And it's, at the end, it's the only way to achieve results. That's why the CARD, the Coordinated Annual Review on Defense, identifies more than 100 opportunities for member states to cooperate. Because to cooperate on what? To cooperate among whom? To cooperate where? Let's put coordinate, time and space coordinates of the word cooperation. Well, there are more than 100 opportunities that has been identified where member states should cooperate, could and should cooperate. And the CART also recommends 6 focus areas where cooperation could be quick started, and they are not the less important for an army: battle tanks, battleships, space defense, or military mobility. Nothing less than that. There are clear opportunities to do better together. And cooperation must be, let's say, the default option in Europe. And here at the European Defence Agency, we should, I say we because I am feeling very much as the president of the agency, we should use the next month to provide further details on cooperation opportunities with the member states. Progress will be monitored closer by ministers of defense on the next spring. But you have to push for joint planning, development, and procurement, and the pooling and sharing of capabilities in order to improve the output of military spending, saving money, saving a study says quite an important amount of taxpayer money, increasing interoperability and operational effectiveness. It will also promote a stronger, more competitive, and more innovative European defense industry. I am strongly convinced that the future of the European defense will start by the defense industry. Let's start the house from the roots, from the basements, in order to arrive at a better interoperability, integration, and effectiveness of our armies in plural. We have to have a better, more innovative European defense industry. Let me give you one concrete example. Right now, there are 3 brand new tanker aircraft stationed here, close to me in Brussels, not in Brussels, in Eindhoven, as part of the multinational multi-role tanker transport unit, which were delivered this year, and they are parked in Eindhoven. This is an initiative born here at the European Defence Agency and a project built on the principles and goals I've been trying just to set out. This program is a good example, stands as a good example of how European countries can cooperate, pooling, sharing resources to address long-standing European shortfalls, in this case, strategic transport and air-to-air refueling. Some years ago, we had a big shortfall in European refueling capacity. Does it make sense that all member states' army has its own refueling capacity to be used not every day? No, to pooling and sharing is a much better answer. And this is also a prime example of European defense cooperation, by the way, in close coordination with NATO. And we need more of this. This is the raison d'etre of the European Defence Agency. This is why the treaty has created the agency. This is why the treaty has created the agency. And this is why I am particularly grateful that I have had the opportunity today to speak to you in my role as head of the agency. I will try not to be the last of my duties. I will try not to be something that it keeps me busy a couple of days a year, for example, in events like this. By the contrary, I will try to follow quickly and closely toward the agenda is proving the competencies that it has allocated. Conclusions. I am often told that defense life cycles are long and that we need strategic patience. You know, I am aeronautical engineering by training. It was a long time ago, but I know more or less how does it work. The defense life cycles are long, and we need to be, if not patient, at least to understand time needed. This is true, but it should not be taken as an excuse. Let me be blunt. I don't think we have the luxury to take time. I don't think we can say, oh, it takes long. So if it takes so long, it doesn't matter we start tomorrow. No, we have to start today. Just because it takes so long, there is no time to lose. And some of the most important leaders in the digital world, when he wanted to do something, their staff told him, oh, it's going to take very long. That's a better reason to start tomorrow. We don't have the luxury to take time. We need to think big, to be perseverant, action-oriented. We Europeans, we need to take responsibility for our own future. These are not just words of propaganda. This is the need. And the time to do it is right now. So please go to the treaty, have a look at what the treaty says about the European Defence Agency. It will be the better guide for your work and the better way of building a network of shared cooperation with other institutions in the Commission and with the member states in order to deliver more and better. Well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to read and to know the output of this conference. I'm sure it will be of much help for me to continue developing European foreign and security policy. Have a nice work and stay safe.
Thank you very much, Head of Agency, for your kind words, also about the work of the agency. And I'm now very happy to welcome across town the Deputy Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Mircea Geoană. I hope we have a bit of a storm in Brussels, so connections are not the best sometimes. But Mr. Geoană, if I can see, if I can welcome you to our annual conference. Hello, sir.
Thank you and good morning. No storm can really break the good connection between NATO and the EU.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
And thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to listen to Vice President Borrell. Also, I'd like to thank Thierry, the Chief Executive of EDA, for inviting me and inviting NATO to this annual conference of the European Defence Agency. Because sustaining European defence, the topic of the conference, is of great importance to Europe and to European security. It also bears a huge importance for us in NATO because European defence is inextricably linked to transatlantic defence, and for us in NATO, on the other side of the city, European defence is the core business that we have to achieve. And we should never forget that what really bonds our two organizations are our common values. And I think this is another incentive for us to continue to strengthen our strategic partnership between NATO and the EU. We have done very good work in recent years. The level of NATO-EU cooperation has reached unprecedented levels. We are working together on so many issues, from improving military mobility and countering hybrid and cyber threats, countering disinformation together. We've done this during the pandemic very successfully, to coordinating our exercises or improving our strategic communications. With the pandemic that we are still in the eye of the storm, we have seen our cooperation accelerate. I mentioned disinformation and countering propaganda, but also resilience has become one of the topics that our two organizations are looking together. As you know, NATO has developed over the last 5 years important baseline requirements for resilience, and we welcome the fact that the European Commission, European Union is also looking into this. I think together we can have a comprehensive approach to resilience, which is becoming one of the lessons learned of this pandemic. Also, we are working hand in hand to develop the right and the best defense capabilities. We have achieved recent results. I listened to High Representative Josep Borrell mentioning the air-to-air refueling capability in Europe. This is one of the very specific projects that we have done together. The EDA, the Organization for Joint Armament Cooperation, and NATO Support and Procurement Agency, we worked together in developing a European multinational multi-role tanker transport fleet. Picking up time and the pressure of time and the urgency of the geopolitical evolutions, we have to say that this was done relatively fast. In only 8 years since we started the project, the first 3 aircraft of the tanker transport fleet were delivered this year. I think this is one of the positive examples that should serve as a guide for further work down the road. The remaining 6 aircraft of this fleet will be delivered by the end of 2024, with an option of 2 additional aircraft in the future. And Luxembourg's recent addition of 1,000 flight hours to its MRTT commitment made the firm acquisition of a 6 aircraft possible. And this is indeed a remarkable practical achievement, what we can do successfully together, and shows the dynamic multilateral cooperation in support of delivery of a major capability. But there are other interesting examples of defense and technological cooperation and industrial cooperation between NATO and the EU. But of course, there is more that we can do together. We are speaking of the threats that we are facing together, and also the issue of strategic culture and the issue of threat perception. Because in the end, this is what triggers national responses, be for allied nations or for European Union member states. My country, Romania, is both a NATO and EU country. So that's why sometimes we see the necessity for us to compare the kind of threats we perceive, and also to make sure that there is a more homogeneous, if you want, understanding of the threats we have faced, all of us, in Europe, in this new era of global competition. Cyber is one of the examples that the EU has developed tremendous instruments and a specific toolbox. NATO is also very advanced in cyber. We have declared 5 years ago at the Warsaw NATO summit, cyber as an operational domain. This is a topic which is so dominant, and this is also something which is a little bit beyond traditional defense and deterrence. This is where we should, and we should work even closer together. Emerging and disruptive technologies. This is something that the NATO leaders in London, when they last met in December 2019, they instructed us, and we are delivering as we speak, on an emerging and disrupting technology implementation roadmap. I'm chairing the innovation board in NATO. We do tremendous work there. I think we can do and we should do more when it comes to new technologies and the way in which these technologies are affecting not only defense and security, but also the way of life. Because the definition of security is becoming far more multifaceted. It's the line between traditional defense and non-traditional threats is becoming more blurred. So this is where we have to work together. We are as democratic nations, as the political West, if you want, we are in a way obliged to work together. Of course, keeping our specificities, keeping our specific mandates, and also our specific marching orders that are coming from each of the 2 organizations. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, human enhancement. These are topics that are in a turbulent transformation, and they are impacting on our security. We have to work and do things closer together. Autonomous systems. This is something which is here already. And many of the allied nations and many of the are looking into this as we speak. The last, let's say, operational domain in NATO that we have declared in London in 2019 is space. Recently, NATO has established in Ramstein in Germany a space subcommand for our military operations and the issue that our Air Force is looking into. And we have decided to establish in Toulouse, in France, another big hub of innovation and defense and civilian cooperation on space, a center of excellence of NATO in Toulouse. So Ramstein in Germany, Toulouse in France. The European Union has a space agency. I think we can do things together more. And there is something else that I think we have to be very clear, and if you want blunt, global competition is intensifying. The rise of China, the way in which Russia is looking at things, the way in which terrorism is not going away, the threats that we have from great power competition and also from technological and more non-state actor threats are very, very important. I remember talking about, in NATO, talking about resilience and telecommunications. I have to say that what Thierry Breton and the Commission have done in terms of the toolbox for 5G was a very important instrument complementary to the standard setting that NATO is establishing, including on 5G. And we should not fool ourselves. China is becoming a dominant global player. And we have to coordinate the way in which our two organizations are looking into China. And I'm very grateful for Josep Borrell for attending and contributing to the NATO foreign ministers just 2 days ago, together with our partners in Sweden and Finland and our friends and partners from Australia on this very important topic. We should keep our specificities. There's a difference in mandate between NATO and the EU, that's a reality. But I think in a strategic sense, we have to look together into the rise of China and also these issues. Speaking of Russia, they have developed and they are developing as we speak super advanced missile systems that are posing a threat to us, to all of us, and mainly to European territory. And this is something that we have to work together because this is not something that we should take lightly. So this is why keeping NATO and the EU, keeping North America and Europe in sync. We have a new incoming administration. We are welcoming the propositions that are coming from the other side of the city in engaging the new administration. We are trying to do the same. We hope to have a summit of NATO early in 2021. I think this moment is one that should encourage us to do an even better job together and realign, resynchronize, if you want. Again, with specificities that should be reflected and respected in how we bring security to Europe and how we can face with global competition in the 21st century. Also, when it comes to terrorism, to nuclear proliferation, to climate disruptions, and even, God forbid, other kind of pandemics down the road, we have to make sure that we put all our instruments together, separately when there is a need, but together when there is a necessity, because this is how we are stronger. And to tell you one reality, I'm coming again from Romania, we're both NATO and EU. We have just one military and one defense budget in our nations that are both NATO and EU. They're not NATO. So sometimes we have to make sure that what we do and we commit in NATO is also, or in the EU, on the other side of the city, is also, strategically coherent, because we just cannot ask to have two separate national defense and strategic identities and cultures when it comes to our organizations. So this is why I personally encourage, Jens Stoltenberg is encouraging a very close and complementary cooperation between NATO and the EU. It is good that the EU is becoming more ambitious on defense and security. This is good news. It's not only burden sharing in terms of the mathematics, if you want, of our defense spendings. This is also about the quality of investment in our defense. We're still very vulnerable, and the way in which international security is developing is putting our societies and our national interests and our organizations to tremendous stress. And this is where I think we have to do much more together. Brexit is happening as we speak with all the complexities of this thing, but this is also shifting the balance. Now, as we speak in defense spending, I'm not giving these numbers for any other reason, just to mention, like Josep Borrell has done, that formidable task ahead of us. Today, 80% of defense spending in NATO is done outside of the EU countries. 80%. 90% of the populations in the EU are also populations of NATO. So we are, in a way, obliged to work together. And if there is evolutions like NATO 2030, a potential revisiting of our strategic concept in the next period of time. And as you naturally and positively is looking to his strategic compass and into this vision about the future, I think we have to make sure that we work together and we keep the synergies in place. I'm a great proponent of a strategic partnership between NATO and the EU. I think that if there will be summits and US, EU, and NATO high-level meetings next year, we have to think how can we really inject a new generation of fresh ideas in what we do together. Because as we enter in this very turbulent period of human history, which is not the beginning of a very complicated period, we need each other more than ever. And we need to do more, we need to do better, and we have to make sure that we keep the integrity of our values and our interests intact in a period which is complicated. So good luck with the work. No storm across Brussels can derail this excellent cooperation that we have. And count on me and all my colleagues for engaging in as many topics as the European Union, European Commission, EDA would deem important for our cooperation down the road. And good luck with the conference.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary General, for your intervention, a very interesting intervention. And as you said, connection was fabulous. This is can only be a very good sign of our cooperation in the future, from now in the future. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Commissioner Thierry Breton. Thierry Breton, as you know, he has a very vast portfolio of responsibilities, amongst others, on defense industry. We are very happy that Commissioner Breton found the time to record a message for us today and to address you all in this recorded message.
Dear High Representative, my dear Josep, dear Deputy Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Geoană, dear EDA Chief Executive, dear Thierry, it is a pleasure to speak to you at this year's EDA Annual Conference, a conference that falls in a key period of European history, a time of crisis and tremendous challenges, but also a time of recovery, transition, and leadership. Just 1 year ago, we have started with a great ambition. Commission von der Leyen made it clear that this Commission is a geopolitical Commission. Europe needs to define its place in the world between all superpowers and raising new ones. And since 8 months, COVID-19 dominates the political agenda across the European Union. This double crisis, both health and economic, acts as a catalyst of major geopolitical trends, but also on stability and conflicts worldwide. The corona crisis is pushing us to think Europe globally differently. I had the opportunity to write with Josep Borrell, but the time of a naive Europe has passed. Of course, we will still count on the virtues of the traditional soft power, but this is not enough. Europe must now be a strategic and autonomic actor. This is why we need to progressively acquire some of the features of a hard power, so that Europe can defend its vision and its interest. It is about becoming a more credible partner for our allies. Hit by this global crisis, we must make everything possible for our continent to emerge stronger. We have to take a number of decisive choices in order to give the European Union the means for a strong industrial recovery, to become more resilient and strengthen our ability to act. we have to become more active and to take strategic leadership. The European Commission has taken strong action by putting forward unprecedented recovery package. This investment can make a real difference in defining the international position of the EU. With budget, we will allocate resources to increase Europe's global competitiveness and innovation capacity. We will invest in the green and digital transition, and we will become more resilient by investing in areas of strategic importance, including our preparedness against biological threats. But let me recall, Europe is not a fortress, and Europe will remain open, especially to cooperation. But to take strategic leadership entails being able to autonomously analyze, decide, and act. It also means protecting autonomously our strategic interest. Strategic autonomy doesn't mean protectionism. This is not about closing the doors to our partners, isolating ourselves, or blocking foreign investments. It refers rather, in my view, to the capacity to have choice, developing and maintaining our infrastructures, technologies, skill competences, and reducing critical dependencies on third countries so we can rely on our own if necessary. As the title of this event is Sustaining European Defence, let me zoom into defence more specifically. There are many challenges in this area, many of them of a technological nature that we can only address together and by investing in defence R&D. It is of paramount importance that we collectively maintain our investment in defence and secure our supply by protecting our defence value chains, which are part of a larger, highly innovative strategic ecosystem. We have to avoid the drastic decline in investment that we experienced following the financial crisis of 2008, which took more than 10 years to be resolved. We also have to spend wiser by spending together, act together, and focus our efforts on common threats. A lot has been achieved over the past few years to establish and consolidate European defence cooperation. Now, these efforts need to be sustained to make EU cooperation the new normal. The European Defence Fund is a very good example to trigger sustained Europe defence cooperation. For the first time, we will invest 8 billion euros of EU budget money in cooperative defence R&D projects to make sure that Europe has a sustainable and innovative defence, industrial and technological base able to deliver the defence equipment that Europe needs. It will represent approximately 13.5% of the overall defence R&D spending in the Union, and with the co-funding that we will leverage under the development part of the fund, it will guide an even more significant share of the overall defence R&D. European Defence Fund funding will be tailored to projects involving cross-border cooperation. We have established strong safeguards to protect the security and defence interests of the Union and its member states, and to guarantee the freedom of action of member states in the use and export of resulting defence equipment. These conditions are security-based and not commercial-driven. In that context, I would like to recall that among the EDA 2019 funded projects, 3 entities controlled by third countries, including from Nato allies, were considered eligible and will receive funding. Preparation for the fully fledged European Defence Fund and setting up the 2021 work programme are ongoing. We have launched discussions with the member states. So far, 11 clusters have been identified, covering all the military domains and areas as varied as defense medical response, information superiority, cyber defense, space, digital transformation, energy and environmental resilience, materials, air, ground and maritime capabilities, and critical components. All of these areas should enable the European Commission to respond to the needs of member states while targeting critical capabilities that are essential for the future. The fund will continue to promote interoperability, open supply chains, and facilitate lasting industrial partnerships. All in all, EDF should facilitate an innovative defense ecosystem with a strong cross-border cooperation with a crucial role of SMEs. It will contribute in filling in existing gaps by developing EU technologies such as reducing critical dependencies, enhancing Europe's resilience and Union strategic autonomy. The EDF is an R&D investment tool, but member states that wish to do so can also engage the Recovery and Resilience Facility to spur investments towards green and digital transition and enhanced resilience of the defense sector. The last point I would like to mention relates to the coherence of all the initiatives to build a defense union. Josep Borrell and I are working closely to make sure that PESCO and EDF are fully aligned. And it works if we look at the first result of the EDADP. We will continue to do so by aligning our views on CART, but also on the strategic compass. I am particularly pleased in this context of the ongoing cooperation with EDA. It works very well. EDA is fully involved in the preparation of the EDADP calls. I would like to thank its chief executive, Thierry, for his personal commitment in this. And we look forward to continue building this very fruitful cooperation. Now, in order to conclude, I would like to say that sustaining Europe defense requires an holistic approach involving all relevant actors at EU level and at national level. You can count on the Commission to pursue an ambitious defense agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much again, Commissioner Breton, for sending us this video message and with these very positive messages.